So thank you all for joining us today, and welcome to another installment of the Global Business School Network's Cross-Border Coffee Break. I'm Rob Vembers, Senior Advisor for Communications and Membership at GBSN. So before I introduce today's panelists, just a bit about GBSN. The Global Business School Network is a non-profit organization that partners with the business schools, industry, foundations, and aid agencies to improve access to quality, locally relevant management education for the developing world. GBSN was initially started within the International Finance Corporation in 2003, and as the institution identified a need to improve management skills in the developing world. Some 17 years later, we're independent of the IFC, however, that core mission remains the same. Together with a growing network of over 100 leading business schools in 50 countries on 6 continents, we foster cross-border networking, knowledge sharing, and collaboration, both within our network membership and the broader business education and development communities. Essentially, we're a purpose-driven network organization for the developing world. With that in mind, let's get stuck into the reason we've all gathered here today. Just a few things to note regarding today's online presentation. All registered participants will receive an electronic copy of the PowerPoint presentation and a downloadable Q&A report containing all questions and answers generated during the course of this hour. The session is also being recorded to be able to be made available in our cross-border coffee break library, accessible via gbsn.org. All of this, together with ways to reach out to today's presenters, will be provided in an email to follow in the upcoming days. Now, although your microphones will remain muted for the duration of the session, we welcome and encourage your questions throughout the session, of course. And to submit a question at any time, click on the Q&A tab, input your question in the box provided, and send it through to us. You'll find the Q&A tab on your Zoom screen, of course. As many questions as can be answered in the allotted time will be addressed, and any unanswered questions to be submitted will be submitted to the presenters and for written response, and those will be included in the Q&A report, which you will receive as already mentioned. Now, today's cross-border coffee break, titled Developing Locally Relevant Case Studies for Africa, is in collaboration with the Case Center, and we encourage you to stay with us for the hour as we'll hear from the director of the Case Center a bit later before we log off today. Richard McCracken will take us through some of the opportunities and resources available through the work of the Case Center. Our main subject today is presented by Amini Kajunju. She is the Executive Director of the IUGB Foundation. The foundation is dedicated to empowering students and helping to develop the necessary resources to make the International University of Grand-Bassam a center of excellence for higher education in West Africa. Amini is joined by Kofi Nda. Dr. Nda is the Dean of the School of Business and Social Science at the International University of Grand-Bassam. We welcome you both, Amini and Kofi, and with that, I'm happy to give you the floor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that background and for that information. We're very happy to be here, and we really are grateful for the opportunity to walk you through this presentation that we initially made at the e-learning conference in Abidjan. But the idea of this project, Dr. Ndai and I have been thinking and working on it for a while, and we're very happy to have this opportunity. So let's just get right into it. As it's been mentioned, we are here to discuss the need to develop African-focused business case studies for African business schools and for policy. And there is a big problem, and the problem is the major lack of African-focused business case studies. What is the situation today? We don't have enough of these case studies. Oftentimes, students at African business schools are learning from case studies that do not give them the local or regional context. And they're learning from case studies that are coming from other regions of the world. And although it's really important to have a global perspective, it's also equally important to have a local perspective. because ultimately we want these students who we hope will become entrepreneurs or leaders of businesses to understand that there are problems to be solved and that they themselves could be powerful in solving those problems. And also we want them to understand that there are opportunities within the African continent. And when we're using case studies from other regions of the world, we miss the opportunity to teach these students that there's lots that can be done right there on the African continent. And so we believe that context is everything and local content is everything. And also the other thing that this leads us to have not enough local business data so that entrepreneurs and others can make sound business decisions. Now, there are case studies being developed on the African continent. Again, not enough. We're far from where we need to be. Where there are bright spots in the case study world is, for example, in South Africa. The University of Cape Town does create and develop case studies. The other bright spots is Lagos Business School has been known to develop wonderful case studies. There are case studies also being developed in North Africa. But the case still remains that there's just not enough. And aside from these bright spots, as you will see later on in the presentation, there's not at all enough case studies for a lot of the countries and the regions that a lot of these students are going to school. And even when there are case studies, they're mainly focused on the big economies of Southern Africa, like Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa.
I mean, can I step in here?
Absolutely.
Please? Okay, I think, as you said, context is very important. And IUGB is located in Cote d'Ivoire, which is speaking French. And we'll see that in all the cases that has been developed in Africa, Francophone countries are absent. We don't see a lot of cases on Francophone countries. So I think what we want to do will be really to give the opportunities for these business owners and these businesses in Francophone Africa, Anglophone Africa, and Arabic Africa to be able to talk together, have cases that are targeting local businesses so that we can really know what is going on in Africa and also in each specific country. So you can continue, please.
Thank you for that, yeah. Dr. Inda. One of the things that we did when we were doing this research, we zeroed in on Harvard, which of course is historically where the case study method was created, and the case study method is still a teaching tool that Harvard continued to use, and lots of other Ivy Leagues obviously use the case study method, and lots of other universities. And so we thought that going to Harvard and sort of getting a sense for what Harvard has in terms of case studies from around the world would give us a really interesting snapshot of the problem. And I'm not going to go into all of the various numbers. You see it in front of you, but I want to point out a few things. One, obviously, most of the case studies will come from North America, and that's true in these numbers. And then of course Europe is there. Asia is even higher than Europe. South America, not so much. And then of course Africa. There you see the number. Out of close to 10,000 case studies, 596 come from or about the African continent. And within the African continent, 171 are from South Africa. And then you can see the breakdown: 67 in Kenya, 58 in Nigeria, 33 in Ghana, Zambia 19, Uganda 16. Cote d'Ivoire, where the university is located, that was of interest to me. And so I dived in on that. And there are 6 case studies on Cote d'Ivoire on the Harvard site. 2 of them were, of the 6, 2 were created in 2019, and they both have to do with the cocoa industry, which is the major cash crop of Cote d'Ivoire. And there's another case study site, IV Cases, and it has collectively close to 36, almost 37,000 case studies, and only 83 are dedicated to the African continent. Again, these are very low numbers for a continent that almost has 1 billion people, with young, almost 250 million young people entering school. It's really important that we change this narrative.
And I want to add that there are many things going on in Africa. There are many young entrepreneurs who are doing wonderful things in Africa, and we need to know about it. We need to be inspired by these people. And I think that for this huge continent, as you said, having only a tiny number of case studies on this, the local business on this continent is very insufficient. And we need really, this is why we need to create more case studies for African students so that they can know better the local context. So can you continue, please?
Thank you. We believe that we have a responsibility to African business students who deserve to know the opportunities and challenges of local SMEs and businesses so that they can use this knowledge to become problem solvers, action-oriented business leaders. And because of that, we want to create, the Center for Knowledge Production and Academic Innovation in Africa at the International University of Grand Bassam. And the first project of this center would be the African Business Data and Case Study Project. DACA, as is called, it would be a Pan-African project that would seek to develop and disseminate business case studies and data from local SMEs and local corporations started and operating in Africa to improve business education and inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs. Dr. Nda, if I could bring you in to just talk to us about why case study instruction is so important.
Okay, thank you very much, Amini. Okay, we know now, and there are studies that exist that have shown that case studies are good teaching methodology for schools all over the world, and especially case study is gonna increase the critical thinking and problem-solving skills of the student, and this is very important. Everybody now is talking about soft skill. All our students need to have soft skills. So these case studies are gonna improve the soft skill of the student, especially in the critical thinking side, problem solving, and also make sure that the student can reflect on the situation that they are facing and then bring in their personal touch on this situation. So this is very interesting for our students. And I'm myself, I'm a teacher, and most of the time when I teach information technology and how business can use them to improve their productivity, be competitive, etc. And every time I'm using Walmart, I'm using those big corporations in America. And most of the students have not really been in America, and they really don't have a clue of what I'm talking about. So I think using the local cases will help our students really develop this critical thinking and problem-solving skills that we are trying to teach them. Also, it is important to link the theory to the practice. So, and case studies contribute to that. You have a situation in front of you, and challenges and opportunities, and you need really to link what you have learned in the classroom with the situation that is going on before you. So linking the theory to practice is another another opportunity that case studies are giving to students. Okay, so I think yes. So overall, it has been shown that case studies are very beneficial, have a beneficial impact on students, and this is why we think that we need to uh, uh, move forward with this project.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm not going to list, list all of or mention all of these topic of interest, but as you can imagine, case studies are written on a variety of business topics and management topics, and we've listed some of them here. And from the African context, I mean, these are also critical. Whether it's the adoption and the use of information technology, to, how are we going to move the informal sector into the formal sectors, and what are the success stories and the failures that have occurred in policy and in other places as businesses do that. Taxation, accounting, customer service, my goodness, an important element as small businesses are growing. Risk management, and so these are all such important issues. And so in developing these case studies for African businesses, we'd want to make sure that we have stories for each of these topics.
Yeah, I mean,
yes.
Okay, thank you very much. What I wanted to add is that you touch a point, the informal sector. And studies have shown that many African businesses are in the informal sector. And there are a lot of things going on in this informal sector. These people are innovative, they are doing things, they are improving the businesses, but they lack something. They lack maybe the theory that they should help them do better. And I think when we are going to write the case studies, we are going to use businesses that function as a normal business. They are recognized by the states, etc. But also we are going to focus on many businesses that are being run in the informal sector and see how they are doing, how they manage to be able to run the business, to hire people, and to make the economy work. So this is what we are going to do. Go ahead, please.
Thank you so much. And so our goal for this project is really to develop the largest database of business case studies for Africa. And to get us started, we'd want to take a look at some of the major regions of the African continent and work with about 6 schools, 6 universities that are interested in increasing the capacity for writing business case studies and having a closer relationship with the entrepreneurs and the SMEs around them. So that's one thing we want to do. The second thing we want to do is work with professors and other experts from all over the world, really bring a global perspective while staying very focused on local content, but bringing a global perspective and getting a sense for what are the best practices when it comes to developing case studies, and maybe even have a train the trainer type of situation, have advisors, individuals who can make sure that this process is moving forward in a way that is productive and gets us to our goal.
Okay.
We want to,
yeah, go ahead, please. Sorry.
We want to create committees that allow us to create workshops and research around case studies and how do you develop them, and how do you disseminate them. And so we want to do that. And ultimately, we'd like to create 200 case studies in the next 5 years using primary and secondary sources. And later on in the presentation, we'll just briefly talk about, all the folks that will need to do that. But this is some of the initial steps we want to take.
Okay, I mean, one key player that we have not listed here, but who are very important are the entrepreneurs themselves, those people who are making the story, and we are writing about them. So we will also select some people who have created businesses in Africa, who have faced some challenges, or who have succeeded, and we are going to also include them in the group. So we'll have school of business, we'll have professors, we'll have our committee, and also we'll have the entrepreneurs who who are going to give us the story to write the case studies.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Absolutely. The entrepreneurs really are the center of all of this. Without them, we certainly cannot have these case studies written. Thank you for that. And other steps that we want to take is to collect business data and market data. One of the challenges that seems to persist when investors and entrepreneurs want to do business in Africa, we can't seem to maintain or keep data and market information that helps folks understand what's really going on in the market and make investment decisions. So our goal is for this project to to help with that. And then ultimately we want to design an online platform, very much like what Harvard has and what Ivy has, and also plug into those systems as well. Create an online platform that stores all the business case studies, no matter where they come from, disseminates them. It's a place where engagement can occur, and it's a place where information can be stored about case study development and teaching and teaching best practices. And really, I think that's really important. It's plugging into the existing systems. One thing about the Harvard case study page is that it's actually drawing from about, if my memory serves me correctly, almost, I don't know, 40 sources. Harvard creates its own case studies, we know that, and those are online, but they also draw from other sources as well. And so we want this online platform to be, if one can say that, a one-stop shop for all things case studies for the African continent.
And I think you're right. And this platform is very central to our idea, which is sharing the information from one unique platform. So depending on how we are going to move forward, if we have some sponsors so to help us build this database or platform, we will make it free to any student, any professors in Africa to come and get the cases and use them in the classroom. But if we don't have any sponsor, and then we have to really use our own fund, probably will maybe make it, we'll ask people to pay a little fee to get the case. But the platform is very important, and it's gonna make a link between all region of Africa, Northern Africa, Western Africa, Central Africa, Eastern Africa, and also Southern Africa. So this will be the place to go to get the cases.
Thank you. And so, hold on. The other uses. Thank you. Thank you very much. So very briefly, we think what we're bringing in here, the market innovation that we're bringing, though it appears very simple, I think it's going to be very powerful. So one, a broad, comprehensive set of case studies coming from all regions of Africa, the aggregation of other case studies, and hopefully a lot of these schools like Lagos Business School, like UCT, would be open to opening up their case study repository and bringing it onto this online space. The other thing is case studies that are in French and in English, very critical. And we may also think about other languages spoken on the African continent. over time, we may want to add case studies in those languages as well, but certainly start off with French and English. Creating case study research development capacity. That's, to us, that's really critical. And then having mobile accessibility. I mean, that seems very sort of normal now for things to be accessible on the mobile phone, particularly with the increased penetration of mobile phones on the African continent and all the many uses that the average African is using their phone. Why not this area as well? And then showing basically the opportunities that are being had by running these small businesses, these medium-sized businesses, these large businesses, and that we have them, and some are doing well, some are struggling, and we need to start having a regional and continental conversation about these businesses and allow our students to be problem solvers and innovators.
Yes, Amiri, and I think Africa is the 21st century continent. Everybody is interested in Africa now. So everybody wants to do business in Africa. And we really need to talk about Africa, to make Africa known, businesses in Africa be known, entrepreneurs in Africa be known. And also, so this case study project is all about making sure that since Africa is the 21st century continent, what is going on in Africa is known, and that we can use it in training our students, in training our human resources for the future. So this is what we want to do.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
We have other goals for the center later on as the center becomes bigger and as we add more activities. One of the things that we want to do is break the, some of the walls that are between Francophone and Anglophone academics working in business education. We really want to break that wall and bring the two together. We know that English has been for a long time now the business language, and some of our Francophone colleagues may not always have access to the information that is being produced, which is a lot, around business education and typically written in English. So we want to break that. Many of Francophone academics many do speak English, but there are also a lot more who don't. And so we want to figure out a way to bring these two academics together. We want to collect, store, and disseminate business data for investors. We also want to look at the intersection, because business interacts with so many other areas of the economy and of politics. So business and politics are connected. We're going through an election here in the United States, and that's all you're hearing. You're hearing how business and politics need to work together for prosperity, and so we want to look at that. We also want to look at how policies, government policies affect small and medium-sized businesses and large corporations. We can talk about taxes. We can talk about all kinds of subjects that are connected to business. So we eventually want to be a center that also looks at that. And also, if the business model is right and we've tweaked it enough, we want this center to be self-sustaining after 5 years.
Okay, thank you very much, Amini. I think the fact that we are not only interested in businesses and we want to expand the project to other areas is very important, because businesses, as you said, are not functioning in a separate world. They are being surrounded by other fields, by other disciplines, and we need really to target disciplines. And this is what makes the project a little bit innovative, because we don't only we'll go beyond the businesses. And also the next step that we are planning to do is to collect the data about businesses. Data about businesses is lacking in Africa. And when you want to do a research, for example, getting real data about African businesses is very, very difficult. You have sometimes to go to the World Bank database and so on, and sometimes the data is not up to date. So this aspect of the project will really help research so that we'll have more data on African businesses, and then people will be able to do research and then try to study the problems that African businesses are facing.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And as we are coming to the close of the completion of this presentation, I just want to talk about all of these activities that we want to do. Obviously will require financial resources, intellectual resources, and human resources. And we believe that in order for us to get started, we need about $250,000. And we think that if we have that over a period of 5 years, we may be able to make a dent with this project. And the money would be used, in the selection of partner schools, in a selection of professors, researchers, writers, and professors who would write the case study, the collection of the data, the convening of business schools and companies to test, disseminate, and market this idea and the case studies themselves. And we think that by the end of this project, we will be able to reach 250,000 business students. And this is the end of the presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay, as a conclusion, what I want to say is for a long time, Africa has been copying, taking things from outside, and we are not really relying our development on what we have, all the opportunities that we have, all our culture and so on. And I think it is time now that we really teach in our schools what is going on really in Africa. What are the problems that we are facing in our businesses? What are the opportunities that we have? And so that our our students that we are training will stay in Africa, work in Africa, and then because they know the context better, and they are gonna make Africa move forward. So this is what I want to say.
Professor Nda, you couldn't have said it better. That this is exactly, at the end of the day, this is exactly what we want. We want African students and African young people to look at Africa as a place of opportunity, not a place to run away from, but a place to stay in and to build. And one of the solutions to prosperity in Africa will be developing the private sector. And we hope that projects like this could help towards that goal. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much to Amini and Dr. Kofi Nda. Your questions have been coming in thick and fast, and also I would encourage all the panelists to check out the chat tab. A number of people have been making comments throughout the course of the webinar, not necessarily posing questions, but making comments, which I'm sure you'll find useful to check out as well. As far as those questions are concerned, remember you need to click on the Q&A tab and submit your question through that mechanism. They've come through, of course, at different stages of the presentation, so it is plausible that some of these have been answered already, but I will pose them nonetheless, as many as we're able to get through at this point. The first question from Tariq Salem wants to, thanks us for the webinar, and then with respect to industry cases which cover entire industries locally or globally, does the case center offer guidelines or training, and also who would be the protagonist in such cases? This is especially relevant for local African industries which target export markets, and also local African entrepreneurship which targets global scale. So I guess Amini and Dr. Nda, I'm not sure which of you, but as far as the protagonist is concerned, I guess the assumption and the assertion is that the African market generally is targeting export individuals or export markets. So as far as the protagonist is concerned, who would you be targeting?
Okay, I'm gonna.
Professor, yeah, Professor, please.
Okay, I think the protagonist for this project, for what we are talking about, there are many of them. I think we need really to be able to change this idea of exporting only, and then try to bring Africa to collaborate among the countries. And I think we know that the African Union is doing a lot of things about that. Many initiatives are being taken so that there will be more commercial relationship between African countries and etc. So I think we are gonna really change the mentality of the student first, to know that they need to study what they have here and be able to stay here. We need also to convince the countries that we need to write about what we are doing here in Africa and what are our challenges, and find some solution that are locally developed, so that we can take our future into consideration ourselves, and so on. So there will be different protagonists in this project. So I will let Amini add something, and then I will continue probably later.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, everything that you just said, and I think depending on the case study, the protagonist will be different. But we will want, I think our desire is to have a variety, right? You know, when I go to the Harvard case study website, I'm blown away by the variety of the stories, and we want to do the same thing for this project. And so that those who are using the case study for education can learn from various sectors and various industries and various challenges that are being outlined in some of these case studies.
Okay,
so
next. Sorry, Dr. Dab, continue.
Let me add. So, for example, in terms of protagonists, those people writing the cases, we are going to target the people from the formal sector, bring them in. Also, the informal sector will be brought in. Students from different horizon, francophone and anglophone countries will be brought in. Entrepreneurs, I said, will be brought in, and the countries, the different region also will be brought in. And something I've realized is that the educational system are different from one country to another country. For example, I went to the francophone system, and then I went to Canada and the US. So in francophone system, we don't have many case studies. So we don't have many case studies. What we do is the professor comes, give the theory, and then we do it. So the case study is new now in the francophone system. So we need really to bring these people to adopt the case study methodology and use them efficiently. So there are many targets that we are gonna bring in this project.
Next question from Olawale wants to know why only 6 schools? If there's a need for a quick production of major core of cases, then every school that feels it can help should be welcomed, more so as cases are required from the most representative diversity of countries, cultures, and stages of economic and social development. You cannot reasonably exclude schools that have a strong case writing record, nor can you exclude the countries that have a more intrepid economy, I humbly suggest.
Okay, so this is a very, I mean, let me finish, start and then you'll finish. This is a very good question. Since this is a project and we are at the beginning of the project, really we need to start small and then grow. This is why we target regions. So I think within each region, universities are collaborating, etc. So when we say we are gonna target the northern region, okay, if we, for example, take a university in Morocco, we are not gonna only use Morocco companies only. We are gonna maybe target other companies like in Tunisia, in Algeria, and so on. So I think for the starting point, we are gonna start small, so that because we don't have the budget yet, If we go too big, then we'll have problems of logistics and then financial problems. So we need to start small. And since we have targeted regions, so we will expand in each region. We'll expand the cases, etc., as the need arises. So this is what we want to do. We are not excluding countries. We are starting small to grow later, but we are not excluding any country.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I was going to say. This is really just to get us started, and then grow from there. With time and more human and financial resources, we can grow. This is really not about exclusion. It's about inclusion with additional resources.
So there's another question that's come through from Ashraf. He sent through a number of questions, one regarding any conflict with publishing clearing centers that you foresee, and then a question harking back to the 6 universities, whether there's any representation from North Africa.
Okay, so the first question is about what? Conflict publishing. Could you repeat, please? I didn't catch the first question.
It's just, do you foresee any issues regarding publishing of these cases?
Yes, yes. The main problem that we foresee is copyright issues. So first, we need to convince the entrepreneurs to tell the story and publish, and then we'll write the story and then publish it. So copyright issue can come here. Also, those people writing the cases, we need to find how we are gonna deal with these copyrights, etc. So we think that there will be some copyright issues that we need to work on as we go with the project. Last time, 2 weeks ago, we had a meeting with a group of a university in Eastern Africa, and they went through the process, and I think they have done wonderful things, and I think we can be inspired by what they did.
Great. So we're surprisingly doing very well for time. So I think what we'll do at this point is, and just a reminder, you can keep your questions coming in. And again, any questions that we may not get to will be put to the presenters, and they will provide written answers, which will be provided to you within the coming days. But I thought maybe good to now introduce Richard McCracken, who's the director of the CASE Center, which is the independent home of the CASE method, dedicated to advancing the CASE method worldwide, sharing knowledge, wisdom, and experience. And I'm pretty sure Richard has a lot of experience and certainly comments to some of the questions that have been answered. So if time allows, once Richard is done, we can return to some of these questions and have a broader dialogue around that. But on that note, Richard, welcome.
Thank you, Rob. And hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'd like to start by thanking Amini and Kofi for a really excellent and very interesting presentation. I recognize and share your vision because the CASE Center itself grew out of a similar situation. Our own genesis was to address a similar problem that was identified by a group of Irish and UK business schools in the mid-1970s, looking to develop the techniques and the facility to write cases about British and Irish industries from an internal perspective. Our founders too thought that the education in the CASE method at that time was dominated by a predominantly American or North American view of business, and wanted to encourage UK academics to write cases that examined British and Irish industry from the inside, with an insider's understanding of the culture. So we come out of a community-based approach to addressing a similar kind of concern, and that led us to adopt a diversity in our approach to the CASE method, so that we support diverse approaches to the CASE method. We're not wedded to the Harvard approach or the Ivy approach or to any single approach. We welcome all kinds of approaches to the CASE method and to case writing. We welcome large cases, small cases, micro cases. We welcome cases from around the world, set in a variety of scenarios and cultures and in any number of locations. So our expression really is in supporting the case method and case practitioners is twofold. One is in building a case collection that reflects the diversity of those approaches and supports and encourages new voices from faculty around the world. So for example, we've worked tremendously hard with faculty based at Indian schools for a long number of years, and the quality of their cases is now recognized, and their cases are used not just in teaching in India, but also there's an obvious value in using local cases in teaching local students, and that's tremendously strong. But those cases also travel very well and are used in classrooms elsewhere around the world. So I think that there would be a huge interest in African cases well outside of Africa as well, to encourage you with that.
Mm-hmm.
And the second leg that we have is in skills sharing and development in writing and teaching. And so as well as our case collection, which has over 60,000 cases, almost 1,000 of those cases, by the way, have a location in Africa, and are in many languages. So there's the case collection, and then we run a series of programs of to support case writers, and that's what I'd like to talk about now. We run a series of case workshops, which are both open, which anyone can come to, or customized, because we will work with a particular school to develop a workshop that caters for their particular needs. They're held in locations around the world, and there's a link provided in the slide if you want to know more about those. We also provide a number of scholarships for unpublished case writers, and those scholarships provide a financial award which helps with the perhaps to fund the research or to travel to a workshop. It provides feedback from a panel of expert case writers, and also a free workshop place on one of our regular workshops. And they are tremendously popular, and we've increased those in the last number of years, and we're starting to see some results coming through where writers who started with a scholarship are now winning case awards in global competitions. And then for anyone who isn't able to get to a workshop or isn't quite at the stage for applying for a scholarship, we have a large number of case writing resources that are available freely on our website. That's videos and articles providing practical tips on approaches to case writing, on issues like how to get entrepreneurs and other business people on board and to gain access, how to get copyright clearance, and how to structure your case to really deliver an impact. And because the impact of the case is really felt in the classroom, so how best to write the case to really maximize the potential to have a really rich and interesting and engaged discussion among students in the classroom. So all of that is how we support case writers, and I'm delighted to say that a recent initiative in partnership with AACSB in the MEA region is a new peer-reviewed journal for teaching cases focused on the Middle East and Africa. That's Case Focus, and we're in the middle of preparing the first edition, which will be published later this year. And submission has now opened for the second edition with a deadline of the 31st of August 2020. So we look forward to receiving many more new case submissions to that journal, and to see that grow vigorously. I was tremendously impressed by your presentation, and we are very, very willing and open and happy to support you in in providing a distribution outlet or a platform for cases that are developed under your initiative. and to working with you in supporting the growth of African faculty writing cases about African businesses in a way that I think is yours, to give voice to give a platform for local voices in examining local business situations. I think is a tremendously important thing, and is to be you're to be congratulated for this initiative, and we look forward to playing our part in supporting it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Richard. So
Yeah.
we've got a bit more time, so I'll go through a few more questions and invite all three of our panelists to jump in as they see fit. I think this one specifically targeted at Kofi and Amini, but I'm sure Richard would have some advice too. The questions come through in various forms regarding the cost of these eventual cases once they are complete. There was a comment that came through. And I'm struggling to scroll amongst all the comments and questions, but it was essentially saying you should not feel or be bashful about attaching a fee to these cases once they're done. Is that the plan? I guess just more around your business model around that.
Yes, that is the plan. We want this to be a sustainable project, and we want we will not be shy about attaching a cost, a price to accessing some of these case studies. I think as the project develops, we will have a better sense for when and how to do it. But I think the comment is well taken, and I think it's right, it's spot on. I don't know if Dr. Da had.
Okay. Yes, I will say that accessibility is very important, and I think we know how financially our people in Africa are struggling with their finances. So if we have a grant to help out do the project, we can make it free. But otherwise, we'll need to attach a fees to this project. I think our goal is to make the case available to all in Africa. This is the first goal. Now, if we can do it with some sponsors, this is good. We are going to make it free. Otherwise, we're going to attach some money to it.
Right, next question, which perhaps Richard, you'd like to take this from Anonymous, wants to know if subjects like quantitative analysis and accounting, for subjects like quantitative analysis and accounting, what are the best practices for developing cases in these areas, and can one rely solely on secondary sources?
Yes, I think the answer to both those questions is yes. Yes, you can write about quantitative subject areas. I think the secret is there are perhaps two approaches. One is to find a story to talk about a protagonist, and the protagonist really takes students through the scenario. And the other is perhaps more of a, that first approach is based on the discussion. The second is perhaps more of an illustrative process, where students are given a scenario and asked to apply some quantitative techniques in understanding it. I think we have examples of both those types of cases in our collection. The collection spans all types of scenarios. And the second part of the question, I've forgotten now. Could you repeat it, please, Rob?
So it was essentially just around the viability, I guess, of I'm trying to find it myself, of accounting and quantitative analysis, and then using secondary sources.
Oh yes, I think again we have many examples of cases that are based on both secondary sources and primary sources. I think the test of the case is less to do with the source and more to do with how the case is written and how it plays in the classroom. The real test for me of a case's value is how it delivers the learning objectives in the classroom.
All right, perhaps just one or two more. Nubi is asking Amini and Dr. Nda, access to organizations, always critical element, of course, in terms of writing these cases. Has the foundation, do you have any plans set up? Do you have a kind of list of willing subjects, so to speak, ready to go, or in terms of facilitating access, and in Nubi's case, specifically in Francophone countries?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Amini. Go ahead, and then I'll complete.
Well, at this moment, right at this moment, no. But there are lots of steps to this, and one of the key steps is developing this relationship with these universities, and then through the universities, then accessing the entrepreneurs. And you know, as Professor Nda mentioned before, we had a really wonderful conversation with a top-notch African business school, and they went through this process and had started developing some solid relationships with the local entrepreneurs. And over time, many of them started giving them lots of really good information for writing case studies. And if my memory serves me correctly, about 70 case studies were written as a result of this process. And so I think one of the first step is that collaboration with the local institutions, whether they're mainly schools or there may be others, the Chamber of Commerce, etc., and then using that to then access the entrepreneurs themselves and incentivizing them to tell us their story.
Yes, Amini, you're right. So I think collaborating with the association, business associations, etc., would be very a very first step. And for example, last week, we had a meeting with someone representing businesses in Cote d'Ivoire, and we have signed an MOU, and we are gonna partner them on trainings. And one of the aspects of the MOU was to facilitate our access to the members so that we can ask them to write cases. We can ask them to come and then give us their stories so that I can write cases about them. And I think the association is okay with that. There is no problem. They say that they are going to put us in touch with all the members. They have thousands of members, with all the members, so that if we want to write, we can discuss directly with them and see how they can help us write our case studies, our cases. So I think through the association, business associations, Chamber of Commerce, and over association, we are gonna really be able to touch the people who are making the stories that we want to write about.
Fantastic. Once again, thank you all so much for all of your questions. You will all receive an electronic copy of the PowerPoint presentation, as well as a downloadable Q&A report containing all the questions and answers generated during the course of the hour, including all of those that we did not manage to get to. We'll get written responses to those. The session itself has been recorded and will be made available in the Cross-Border Coffee Break Library, accessible via gbsn.org, also within the coming days. All of this together with ways to reach out to today's presenters will be provided in an email to follow as well in the days to come. Just a couple of GBSN matters, if you will, before we say goodbye. We can go to the next slide. Thank you, Nicole. I would encourage you to visit gbsn.org/membership for opportunities. If you are a student, faculty member, or alumni from a members school, we've got great learning and networking opportunities available to you. Just some of those on the screen, as you can see currently. So please go into gbsn.org/membership. And then onto our next final, well, not final, but certainly our next cross-border coffee break. I'll tell you about that in a second, but let me tell you about our GBSN annual conference, which is taking place this November in Miami, Florida, at the Miami Herbert Business School. A call for proposals currently open for our conference, which is entitled Beyond Business and Borders. The deadline is the end of the month, so please log onto our website as well if you are interested in attending and certainly interested in presenting. Then onto our next cross-border coffee break, which is a week from today. We'll deal with the global impact of COVID-19 on business schools. Of course, many of our schools within the network affected, and certainly everyone around the world. Certainly, GBSN CEO Dan Leclerc will be joined by fellow academics and administrators as they explore the scope of the problem, discuss what schools are doing to deal with the issue, and look ahead to what the immediate future holds and share any potential lessons already learnt. The webinar, there will be 2 separate webinars to accommodate for as broad an audience as possible. So I encourage you to find a time zone that works for you and register at gbsn.org/events. That is a week from today, March 10th, as led by Dan Leclerc, our CEO. And with that said, we encourage you to stay safe. Thank you so much for spending the hour with us. I wish you a good afternoon, good evening, and a good morning from Washington, D.C.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, everyone.
Okay, take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye. Thank you.